we get tired.
Okay, so we're talking about the final section, which is the graduated path to enlightenment, and let's say a brief overview of the practices. So we covered what was called the initial scope of spiritual practice, which is basically getting our life organized. That's the precious human rebirth. Things are impermanent. I'm inspired by Buddha Dharma Sangha, and I'm more careful with my karma. Then the middle scope, which first touches on, of course, suffering, but in this case, it's rather just sort of realizing the delusions that disrupt my life, what's the cause of those, and then meditating on sort of how you say that my nature, my sense of self, and understanding the voidness. Then we arrive at the great scope of spiritual practice, and on the what's the graduated path in a few points, 2023, it says basically bodhicitta, 7 points or 5 points, 6 perfections, meditation on emptiness. Okay, so that's just it's called the graduated path in a few points. Then if we do the graduated path outline, and this one I have graduated path outline English 2008. We are on page 10. And again, you don't need to have this. I mean, later when you watch the video, you can look at it. So the great scope just means is that in the first 2 scopes, initial and then the medium scope or middle scope, we basically got ourselves organized. We first got our life in order. And then the second point is that then we started to understand ourselves in a deeper way. So you could say the first level is saying organizing ourselves. The second one is a deeper, more psychological, more analytical way of analyzing ourselves. But of course, it's spiritual. It's not just sort of like psychology, but it does, anyway, it's profound. Okay. When we arrive to the great scope of spiritual practice, then on the basis of having got ourselves organized and understanding ourselves better, we then start to say, well, gee, I'm interdependent with the universe around me, so may I be of benefit? So with that thought in mind, then it starts off again. This is a quite elaborate presentation, but I'll just touch on it briefly. So there's the definition of bodhicitta is just, I'm interdependent with the universe. May I be of benefit? May I repay the kindness? And then it goes to the benefits of bodhicitta as that you enter the Mahayana, you become a son or daughter of the Buddhas, you surpass other spiritual practitioners because of the quality of who you are. Then vast amounts of merit. So those are just basically, like it's a very positive thing to be involved in. Then point number 3 is that there's the wishing bodhicitta and adventuring or engaged. And wishing is just, gee, I'd like to be a nice person. And when you actually are engaged, or in the text it says venturing, but it's engaged, it means I'm going to do it. So the example is that, I'd like to go to Cancun and, hang out on the beach, or maybe I'd like to go to southern France, that's like wishing. And then you say, okay, I'm going to buy the ticket, I'm going to go. That's actually engaged bodhicitta. So it's actually, you're going to do it. And then there's 3 styles of a way of doing it. Like one is, I'm going to help others. The other one, I'm going to go together with them, or I'm going to go first to enlightenment and then come back and help others. And those are called the 3 minds of generating bodhicitta. It just refers to, for example, one is called like the shepherd. It's sort of like you let everybody else go in front of you. You guide everybody through the gate to enlightenment, and you're the one that's the last to go through. And some people have that sort of an attitude. They say, everybody before me. Now, the funny thing is that actually you become enlightened very fast if you have a very good altruistic heart. But the point is that there is people who have certain attitudes, so this touches on the types of attitude. So some people say, hey, I'm going to let everybody else go first. I'm going to help them find that gate and such. The second one is like, no, we're going to do it all together. And I think most of us would fall in that category. But again, it's just sort of like the example is we're in a boat and we're all together rowing the boat across the ocean of samsara to the far shore of enlightenment. And then the king-like, sorry?
I'm sorry to interrupt the flow. I'm just saying, like Odysseus and his crew going through the samsaric seas.
Yes. Good. I mean, then the king-like bodhicitta is just, I'm going to do it first. I'm going to get enlightened, and then I can come back with all the glory of being, majestic and help sentient beings. So it's just personality types. That's all it really refers to. And people will fall into one or the other depending on their particular nature. Then there's what's called the 7 types of bodhicitta and the 5 types. Now, to be really honest, the first one, which is called the 7, is perceiving all sentient beings as your mother. Now, that one's more difficult because it relies on the idea that you've had, millions and millions of rebirths. So it's quite conceivable that you have a relationship, personal relationship with every sentient being. And then it picks on the mother because of the feelings of love we have. But the thing that's beneficial with this one is the very first one is, or the first point is, or the second point in these 7 points is remembering the kindness of your mother. And so you actually go through, and if you attend good discourses, Lama Zopa is very good for this. About it. It's like it goes through like your mother was pregnant with you for 9 months and she always just was thinking of you. And then when you were born, I mean, it was a very traumatic experience for her because she had to give birth. I mean, she could have died, you could have died, a lot of stress for her, but she did it. And then the incredible thing is immediately having arrived out of her womb, she doesn't worry about all the pain that you caused her. She's immediately saying, are you okay? Are you my darling child? So there's a whole series of meditations on this, of just remembering your mother when you were a teeny baby. And what it can do, again, in providing your mother is a reasonable person, is you start having this very warm feeling in your heart, and it's a generation of love. And that's the big benefit of the 7 points is that you actually touch on a very special type of love, that somebody really cared for you. And then the funniest thing, though, is that of all the people in your life, your friends, your partners in life and everything, no one will have loved you as much as your mother. That's sort of a reality. Like no one has put as much effort and energy into you than your mother. Again, there's all the details that then goes over repaying the kindness, great love, great compassion, pure bodhicitta or pure intention and bodhicitta. But the main point with this one, because it is a little more complicated, is the memories of what your mother went through and then the feeling that arises within you. And again, it's important to remember that she was just an ordinary person at one point, got pregnant and then gave birth to you. And so it's not like, the personality of my mother and what she's done to me since then and all the other details, which for some people, mothers can be complicated. I mean, they are just a sentient being. The big point in this one is that you can touch the love that was given to you by your mother and the feelings that arise within that, because those are your feelings and that's your feeling of love. And that's the special point of these 7 points. The one that's much more realistic is the 5 points, which is, again, now this is on page 11 of that longer presentation, and it's called Equalizing Yourself and Others, the advantages of exchanging self with others, the disadvantages of not, the ability to exchange self with others, and taking and giving. Now, those are the titles. The equalizing, the basis of that is everybody wants to be happy, nobody likes to suffer. And that's the way we're all equal. And that applies to us as humans, it applies to an insect, it applies to an animal. Everybody's just looking to be happy. Nobody likes to suffer. Now, if you were to say, well, what about the people that kill other people and do stuff? Well, in their delusion, they somehow think, oh, if I steal or if I kill or if
It's beneficial.
if I intimidate others, I'm thinking, oh, that's how I can be happy. So although they're pursuing happiness, they're completely confused about what is real happiness compared to a deluded happiness. So in that way, even a criminal is equal to me in the sense that they want to be happy, they don't want to suffer. It's just they've got very unskillful technique. Okay, so that's the equalizing. Then the advantages of exchanging self with others. What that is, the real basis of that is meditating on that just how much we are interdependent. Like again, I mean, my body came from my mother and father. My food I eat, the water I drink comes from Mother Earth. The education I have comes from teachers and such. I don't exist without being interdependent. And so therefore, the basis of the point number 2 is that you go like, wow, I don't exist outside of all the things that support me. And so you go like, gee, you know, if I was to just be, you know, ruthless and just I want to take advantage of everything, okay, but that's not a reality. That's a very selfish point of view. The better point of view is, hey, I'm interdependent. So, I mean, there's advantages of being kind and friendly to other people. I mean, it's connections. I mean, and the funny thing is, if we start to think about our life, for example, I mean, the people we've met, the people we love, and things, it's all through connections, meeting people, this and that. So that's part of just being, I am interdependent. And that's the benefit of exchanging self for others. And it's not really exchanging, it's just appreciating others. Then the disadvantages, well, you'd be, if you don't do it, then you're just egocentric. It's all about what I can get, not what I'm going to give. And all we need to do is think of somebody who's very egocentric, very self-centered. And I mean, are they a pleasant person? No. You know, it's a person who's friendly, warm, supportive, shares things, is generous. Those are great friends. People that are miserly and argumentative and critical, well, they're not much better, you know, when we have them in our lives, you know, but they're not the thing. So those are the advantages and the disadvantages. And rather than saying exchanging, it's more like appreciating, just as a word there. Okay, then the ability to exchange self with others just means is that you start to become more conscious of others and the interdependence. And then you use your breathing. And that's called the giving and taking at point, the 5th point, where you inhale interdependence and you exhale, may I be a benefit. You know, I inhale, you know, Mother Earth, and I say, thank you, Mother Earth, for all you give me, and may I be more environmentally conscious. Okay, and then I inhale my family and all the people that maybe support me, and I exhale back, may I be a benefit. And then I inhale people that have educated me, and I said, wow, thank you, you know, and I exhale back, may I be a benefit. And that's the 5th point. So that's by far, from my point of view, the most powerful change of attitude. It's just appreciating that, wow, we only exist because of interdependence. And even if we're very successful, you know, because we're smart and things, still we need other people in our lives, you know, to be the basis of our success. Anyway, so the 7th point is very good for touching a very deep feeling of love. And the 5 point is a very realistic way of really changing our attitude to appreciating how it is that we actually exist. So then that takes care of just the development of bodhicitta. Then there's a variety of other things. Well, there's small commentary again in the extended version. Then there's the 6 perfections. And the 6 perfections are generosity, well, let's say ethics or principles, patience, joy, meditation, and wisdom. Okay, now those are called the 6 perfections of being a bodhisattva. And the example says this, is that the perfection of generosity is not that you give everything away. The perfection of generosity is that you can't solve everybody's poverty. But the perfection of generosity is, I have a generous heart, and when it's appropriate. And the big thing with generosity is that it's actually giving things when it's appropriate. Like when somebody needs something, it's not like, oh, I have money, I'm just going to give it away. That's okay, you would accumulate some karma. But if you saw somebody that needed help financially, and you say, oh, okay, and then you practice or you give some money, that's real generosity because you see a need. If somebody needs medicine, you don't just give them some aspirin, you find the medicine and you give them what they need. So generosity does qualify itself as being, and upon perceiving a necessity or a need, you respond without, as appropriate, okay? It's not like, again, you have to give everything away. And then there's 4 types of generosity. That is material things, giving protection, giving love, or giving some wisdom, Dharma teaching. So those are the 4 types of way of being generous. And it goes into quite a bit of detail there. Then perfection of ethics. Now, ethics actually means principles. And this is the second of the perfections. It just means as much as I don't want harm done to me, I won't do harm to others. Now, that's the same thing as karma, but the point of it is that I have principles, and that's what the perfection of ethics is. So, ethics, you could say, is I won't cause harm to the best of my ability, but it is more like that. Hey, I have some principles in my life, and these are really important. So I have perfected my ethics, my principles of life. Then there's a perfection of patience. And patience is actually, it's not like someone's abusing me and, that's not appropriate. Rather, it's like I'm in a situation which is complicated. What's the best way to solve it? And so that pause where you say, what's the best way to do something to resolve it? That's the perfection of patience. It's, you could say, the wisdom of knowing that maybe I have to wait a little bit to do something good. So patience isn't I'm being abused and I accept it. That's a really inappropriate way, although sometimes we have to be quiet or patient. But the reason that we're patient is we're looking for a way to respond that will be beneficial. Okay, so it's just quite interesting to understand patience correctly. So in some situations, maybe we should react. In some situations, we just have to sit there and let the person be angry because we're waiting for the opportunity to say something useful. And sometimes we have to wait 2 or 3 days for that person to calm down to then sort of say something that might be useful. So that's the perfection of patience, okay? Perfection of joy. Perfection of joy refers to being positive. And so, for example, let's say you're approaching a door of a store and you open it for somebody, or no, sorry, you're watching somebody else walk to a store, somebody else is behind them, they open the door and let the person go in front of them. You think, hey, that was nice. That's joyful effort. When somebody does something nice, something beneficial, something, let's say, good, then the hey, that's good. I like that. That's what joyful effort is. Is that you basically are rejoicing or joyful. And the other one is that you like to meditate. So, for example, is that you don't meditate to the point where you then really tired and can't meditate any longer. That's then you end up with saying, no, I can't do. Rather, it's better to meditate for a period of time that is really good for you, that when you finish it, you feel good. So those are example. Joyous effort is I'm excited with what I'm doing with myself. I'm happy about it. If I see other people being positive, I'm happy about that. And then, it's actually, there's quite a bit of an elaboration and there's quite a bit of teachings there. Again, in the Graduate Path Outline English 2008, it says, what are the obstacles to being joyous? It's being lazy, it's being procrastination, it's being distracted with meaningless things, or actually low self-esteem. Those are the three main reasons why we don't get joyful. Low self-esteem, we're always distracted, or we procrastinate. Anyway, the things that are beneficial for being joyful are aspiration. I'm excited where I'm going with myself. I've got steadiness. I am a happy person. And I've gotten rid of the things which basically distract me. Okay, so again, there's lots of commentaries to be read on this. Again, all of these are interesting things to understand about yourself. Like when we are talking about being a meditator and moving forward, Buddhism's got a very, very nice presentation of how to work with yourself and skillfully. It's not like dogma, do this, do this. It's like understand yourself, understand how to move forward. Then there's perfection of meditation. Again, that's just basically how to meditate well. There's lots of there's lots of details in there, like finding a good place, being quite contented, abandoning distraction and stuff. And then there's what's called the obstacles for good meditation, the antidotes. This is all in the longer presentation of meditation, perfection of meditation. And then the 9 stages of it. Again, there's lots of teachings in this regards, which are good to get into. And I'm sorry, I'm sort of rushing through it, but I don't want your phone to run out of time. Anyway, so then there's what's called the 9 stages.
I'm just laughing a bit about the various categorizations, and one of the questions I'm about to ask you later is how do you apply all this theory to meaningful action? But please go on.
Well, okay, as I was describing, the techniques in the graduated path, it gives the errors where we could make an error or where we have an
Mhm.
obstacle, and then it gives the solutions about it. So again, I mean, this is, I'm doing an overview. There's lots of little details in there, which
Mhm.
should come out of having teachings, in an extensive way. A lot of this, it takes several years to get all of this down. I mean, it's like any sport or anything you do. I mean, you slowly build up an incredible ability, and then
Mhm.
after 5 or 10 years, you're very proficient in what you're able to do. It's because you've studied and you've understood the things that are necessary. Anyway, so just come back to the, well, in the regards to meditation. Uh, again, it goes through what's called the 5 obstacles, then it goes the 5 antidotes, then the 9 stages, 6 powers that you can add to that to make it more a thing, and types of attention, which are like, for example, forceful, interrupted, uninterrupted, effortless. It's a very elaborate presentation, okay? Nothing
Mhm.
that's too simple. Then finally, there's the perfection of wisdom, which is the nature of reality, and you do it in 2 things. You do it on your sense of self, and you do it on the nature of reality. Generally speaking, as a Mahayana Buddhist, we first look at the nature of reality, because if you can appreciate that we're in a dynamic universe of many causes and circumstances and interdependence, then your bodhicitta is much more activated. Then you shift to your sense of self and you say, well, how do I understand myself? How do I perceive myself? But you can use the wisdom that you gained in looking at the interdependence of the universe and apply it to yourself, to your sense of self, and say, okay, well, hey, my emotional life is because of the interdependence of the people I've had in my life, my education, my sense of self, and all the dynamics. So the perfection of wisdom is really how I understand reality. So when you put all of those together, and again, there's quite a bit of material in the Gradual Outline English 2008, and I'll send it to you again just to make sure you have it. But the
I
that
have it. It's okay. But thanks for
Okay,
your
good,
offer.
good. Anyway, so that concludes then, you've got, okay, I got my act together, initial scope. I understand myself deeper, middle scope. I started to actually have a much greater state of consciousness about myself and the world around me, great scope. Within the great scope, I'm generous according to the situation as necessary. I have good principles about my life. I can be patient with difficult situations, looking for a better solution. I'm a joyful person. I've got good stability in my mind, and I understand reality. So that's the basis of Tantra. If you have those things
Mhm.
in place, and it's not like you have to have them perfectly in place, but you build yourself up slowly, slowly, then you can move into tantras. And so the final thing of the great scope is the practice of tantra. And Tsongkhapa, who was the founder of our particular lineage, said,
Mhm.
once you've established the foundation, and then you understand tantra, why would you would definitely want to practice it. Okay, so this meaning
Mhm.
is tantra is very good. It's a really profound way to integrate it. Another way to look at it is that the graduated path to enlightenment, which is important, is a structure that gives you understanding, but the way that
Mhm.
you actualize it is in the practice of tantra. Okay, so
Mhm.
you actualize it in the graduated path, but it's understandings. Whereas when you move
Mhm.
it into your nervous system and your mind and the energy within your body, that's the practice of tantra. Okay, and so then there's the 2 lower tantras, 2 higher tantras, and in the highest tantra, there's a stage of generation and stage of completion. Most of the teachings you're receiving right now are in the stage of generation, which is like how to be a deity, recitation of
Mhm.
mantras, visualizations. The stage of completion, of course, is Tumo, where it's called the six yogas of Naropa. But just to be clear, if you haven't got some experience of psychic heat Tumo, which is opening your central channel, all the other experiences of the stage of completion will not happen. So
Mm.
Getting in touch with your central channel, learning how to access it and, so to speak, open it, is the doorway to all the higher practices of the stage of completion. But that's the final thing. Again, whatever deity you're practicing, that's going to be applicable. So generally in the lower tantras, I mean, having a bit of Tara mantra, very good. Having Om Mani Padme Hum, Avalokiteshvara, very good. Bit of Manjushri, good. Those are basic.
How
And
are the lower tantras categorized? Why are there two lower tantras instead of just one?
because okay, there's four types of tantra. The first one is merely activity. So you're virtuous, you're very clean, you're very careful with your diet and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it has deities, but it's a little bit more external. The
Okay.
second level is called performance tantra, and in that one, then it's got more internal yoga. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
just I'm clean, I bathe every day, I've got a good diet. No, now I'm actually doing some internal meditations. It's called dwelling in sound, dwelling on the light, mantra recitations in your heart chakra and stuff, but it's not got a lot of detail. When you move to Yoga Tantra, number three, then it's definitely, you could say, 70% internal yogas, 30% outside sort of activity. When you move to the highest Tantra, it's all internal. It's all about chakras and nervous systems and such like that. So basically, all four of them have deities, but the first one you could say is more relationship to the deity. The second one is getting more connected to the deity. The third one is definitely a lot more internal yoga. And the fourth one is definitely high-end yoga, internal yoga. So that's the reason why they're categorized as, let's say first, second, third, and fourth. Okay.
So do
So
we open this to questions?
yeah, now I've concluded a brief overview of the graduated path to give you a sense of, okay, things that I know where to put things. And again, do
Mm.
remember, this is something you can study for the next 20 years, because even I can attend teachings from some geshis or some of the lamas, and you go like, oh, I never understood it on that level. And that's why it's important to never think, oh, I've attained the graduated path, I don't need to study anymore. That'd be arrogant.
Mm.
It's always important to be humble and to say, I'm always open to maybe learning a little better. Okay, now questions, yes.
You wish to begin?
Don't have anything, as usual.
All right. So my first question is this. In our tradition, we have these distinctions of lower Mahayana vehicle, great vehicle, and Tadrayana or Vajrayana vehicle. But from the perspective of the Theravadins, what is called the lower vehicle is complete. So I'm just curious to hear your perspective on this. What is your response if somebody says like, no, all these distinctions that you're making, they're, just abstract elaborations of dogmas. Hinayana is more than enough. What you call the lower vehicle is more than enough for complete and perfect enlightenment.
Okay, one has to be a little careful about the way you use words. So it wouldn't
Mm.
really call it a lower Buddhism. It would be, basic Buddhism, basic concepts. And if you actually went to a Buddhist country that was focused in the Hinayana or Theravada, it's called the older tradition, you'd find them very, very concerned about karma and getting out of samsara. So
Mm-hmm.
the focus of, let's say Theravada, the older tradition, is, get free. Don't be caught up in suffering. And so that's the scope of their practice. Now, they have people with great love and compassion, but they just don't emphasize it so much. So that's that's the only difference between Theravadan Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism is Theravadan, you could, well, there's another way of looking at it. Buddha taught a certain, like, let's say you were attending teachings with a teacher for 10 years, and that teacher always focused on, just getting out of suffering, realizing this, being careful of your karma. Then you left that teacher and you went off and lived in another country, but that teacher kept teaching, And then they started talking about Mahayana practice of Tantra, but that was from year 10 to year 20. So that's sort of what happened in Mahayana and Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism is that some people left the classroom and didn't get the other teachings. Now, in Theravada Buddhism, they do talk about bodhisattvas, but they put it in the context. Again, this is for a very strict Theravada Buddhist, that it's too complicated. It's better just to get free of suffering. So you have to understand that it's talking about a personality in one way that's just focused on a certain way of practicing. It's not really a country. For example, I mean, we can go to Thailand, which is considered a Theravada country, and we can find great bodhisattvas, but they just wouldn't call themselves that. But they are great bodhisattvas because they've realized great love and compassion. So it's merely a.
You can find atheists who are great bodhisattvas even.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, because an atheist just doesn't believe in God. That means atheist, not theistic.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that they're not a good person. It's just they don't believe in God. And in one way, we could say Buddhism is atheist, but the point is that we just don't define God the same way that Christians do. But so we do have an ultimate entity. So Buddhists are not atheists, but we're not believing in a God creator. So there's a difference there. You have to be quite careful with the wording. So Hinayana, Mahayana, lesser vehicle, greater vehicle, Hinayana refers to, I'm only doing it for myself. That's just for me. Mahayana is, I'm doing it for the benefit of many. So it's about a personality attitude. It's not about, about a person. It's about the attitude.
Yeah, but there's also another difference is emptiness. So I'm just curious to know your perspective. Do you think that a Theravadin can actually get fully enlightened without an understanding of emptiness that Mahayanists have?
Okay. Yes, they could get enlightened, but they would have been rather profound in their understanding of reality. Now you have to go, in this case, we're talking a little bit of philosophy. In the Hinayana point of view or Theravada point of view, they have voidness, but their voidness is a little bit on the side of being nihilistic, because they say, for example, if you understand your sense of self, because remember, they only focus on sense of self. They don't talk about phenomena. That's one of the differences about what they're meditating on. They're talking about their sense of self. In their sense of self, they say, if I understand that I'm not self-existent, they could use that word, then they say that when the causes and circumstances stop, I am liberated. And the example they say then is, when a candle that's burning, the wax finishes, where does the flame go? Does it go north, south, east, or west? No. The causes for the flame have ceased to exist. That's what they would call nirvana. Now, again, there's other presentations of it, but that's a simple version of it, that they would say, where does the flame go when the causes and circumstances of a candle cease? You can't say. It just is liberated. It's free. So that's their way of talking about voidness. In the Mahayana, it's a little different. They don't quite talk about it that way. So so coming back to your question, absolutely, somebody that's intelligent enough could become fully enlightened, even in Christianity, if they had the right understanding. I mean, you can think of there's that famous philosopher or mystic that was in Northern Europe.
Eckhart?
Meister Eckhart.
Meister Eckhart.
Eckhart. Yeah, I mean, he's Christian and he's got this incredible spirituality. So it's important to understand that if someone's very dogmatic, just a certain philosophy, yeah, maybe they're very rigid. If somebody's intelligent enough, they'll get it.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. Now into more practical questions, enough with philosophy for the day. About what you said regarding breathing in interdependence and then breathing out being of benefit. I'm just curious, and perhaps this is a too personal question for you, but I'm very curious and I want to learn from you. When you are doing mantra recitation, Can you walk us through your internal processes? What do you do? What do you feel?
Well, okay, in mantra practice, well, it depends on the visualization, but generally speaking, you send out light or you send out deities and they work for the benefit of sentient beings, and then you draw them back in. So you could say as you exhale, they go out, as you inhale,
I
they
know,
come.
I know the theory. I want to hear what you feel.
Well, what I feel is that basically it's my mind that I'm making big, like I'm extending it into the universe. And if my mind touches something that's suffering or delusional about reality, may somehow my energy affect them and help them become more enlightened, may help them have a
Mm.
bigger mindset. Now, whether it's just the energy or whether it's then they hear something I say, so that's the way I think of it, is like I am interdependent with the universe, and may my existence in some way help people become a little more enlightened. So whether I do it with visualizations of deity, whether I do it with visualizations of light, or just expanding consciousness, that's what's going on. So whether it's going on inside of me or it's going on outside of me, it's all the same basic energy.
And do you synchronize your mantra recitation with your breathing?
Well, it depends. Okay, it depends on the practice. So sometimes just mantras is conscious energy that you expand into the universe. You don't have anything to do with your breathing.
Mm-hmm.
You could mix it with your breathing if you wanted to, but it's not a necessity.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you have two things. Yes, you could, and no, you don't need to.
Okay. Thank you. That was actually very helpful. Thank you. And insightful. On my third question, all right. So I get a theoretical foundation is necessary for any practice. I get this. But when you begin describing the subcategories of the 6 parameters, I'm just thinking, okay, that's nice information, but it's too rationalistic. Like in practice, in actual practice, in when you want to help somebody,
Yep.
when you want to help yourself,
Yep.
how do you apply this? Do you have it like in back of your mind all this categorization? Oh, and this category fits in
Oh.
situation, and this category in that
Oh.
situation.
Yeah, I
How
agree
do I
with you.
integrate this in a way which is beneficial for myself and others in a skillful way?
I agree with you that it's broken into many, many subcategories. I mean, it's like almost a huge headache. The only reason it was done like that was to say, so it'd be perfect for you. You have lots of questions. So if you have a lot of
Mm.
questions, when you look at the subcategories, you'll normally find an answer to some of the questions you have, because Buddhism wants to rely on intelligence, not on
Mm.
faith only. Now, faith is important, but intelligence is more important, because if you understand something, your faith is very solid. If you're just based on faith, you're not. So the only reason of all the subcategories is to make sure that you really have a greater sense of what it's all about. But the final position is, no, you don't need all the subcategories. You just need to be, a conscious individual. But what's
Mm.
interesting is sometimes, like take for example generosity. I can be generous in a material way. I give somebody an apple. I can be, the
Mm.
next one is called actually love, but it's also called time. I can spend some time with somebody because they need some help. I can give protection to somebody that maybe needs a little bit of protection. Or I can give some wisdom. I can give some good advice. So those are the four
Mm.
types of generosity. So let's say you're walking down the street and somebody says, "Hey, Odus, I need to talk to you." And then you say, well, I don't know if I have the time for that, But then you go, okay, no, but hey, it's one of my generosities. So it just helps you a little bit to have a broader practice. But again, really, all the subcategories are more for when you're meditating. The final conclusion you come to for yourself personally doesn't require all those subcategories. That's too intellectual. Just, but maybe some of the subcategories might polish you a little better in who you are.
Okay, I get it. All right.
But I agree with you. I can't, I mean, I memorized a lot of the subcategories, but it's not like I sit down and think about them a lot. I mean, I sort of look at them, reflect on them, maybe try to come to one emotional conclusion about it, and then I move on.
Yeah, makes sense.
Jumper, there's a bird singing for you every now and again.
There are
Oh,
multiple birds right now singing. They're happy to hear you.
good. And how was your time with the Lama and Medicine Buddha and all of this?
Wow, it was very nice. Actually, it was a White Tower retreat. So the Medicine Buddha retreat I'm going to do with Elizabeth is going to occur at the end of May.
Okay.
So it was very nice. I really like Lama Tsering Rinpoche. We instantly connected. Our characters match very well. And as I wrote to you, I ended up being his physical therapist,
Yeah.
which was an honor for me to be able to apply my skills as a therapist in this way to help a Lama be more relaxed and feel good during his teachings. Which, by the way, if you ever need this, just let me know. I'm available.
Okay. Good. Yeah, actually, a lot of Tibetan lamas have health problems. I mean, I can say that's something I've seen with a lot of Tibetan lamas. They don't do exercise. Sometimes their diet's really bad. I mean,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that's more the
All those
traditional lamas.
vegetarian diets are not so great.
Yeah, no, but that's what you experience is quite common with the Tibetans. They don't have a lot of common sense about diet and exercise.
Well, and he's extremely busy. Like he barely has time to take a breath for himself, and then on top of that, he has to do his commitments, which last 2 to 3 hours per day.
Yeah.
It's crazy his schedule. Huh.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's why he's a monk because he doesn't have anybody else in his life, so he can do that. That's one of the benefits of being single that you can be like that. I mean, for example, with me, I mean, I'm with Raquel. I can't do like that. My marriage would be finished in no time.
Yeah, I understand, understand. And by the way, I also gave him a bear hug, similar to what I gave you in Killarney.
Okay, good.
He really liked
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. Don't worry. I'm familiar with you, so I enjoy your bear hugs. Good.
All right.
Okay, so I hope your cell phone still has some time.
It does. It does. Um, one final comment. I recently read a book on Mahamudra of the Kagyu lineage, and I noticed, I don't know if you do this consciously, but I noticed that many of the things I read, you actually have said multiple times in your teachings. So I'm just curious to know whether you have been influenced by Mahamudra teachings of the Kagyu lineage or
You
Mahamudra
know,
teachings in general
the
when you
Galupa
present your message.
Mahamudra comes from the Kargyu.
Ah,
You know,
okay.
like Tsongkhapa, who is the starter of my particular lineage, he only had access to Nyingmapas, Kargyupas, and Sakyapas. So all
Mm,
of the teachings that we have in the Gelupa are either from Nyingmapa, Gelupa, or Sakyapa or Kargyupa. And so it's not like that we took them away. Rather, Tsongkhapa was really intelligent and he polished a lot of what those guys had to say. And that's why he became so popular. So you could have a Sakyapa Lama that came along, bumped into Tsongkhapa, and Tsongkhapa presented his Sakyapa teaching, but with unbelievable clarity. And he went,
mm,
wow. And so then that became the Galupa lineage. So, the Kargyupas have, you've got to be a little sort of careful in one way that there's these schools of Buddhism and they have monasteries and they need money and they need this and that. And so
mm,
they have sort of their game, like their gameplay, each one of these. And what they
okay.
need, of course, is supporters and money to make it all work. So that's one side. That's sort of, you could say, the political side. But then there's the practitioner side. And the practitioner side of people who really practice and not so much like, like being closed-minded, we're all pretty much doing the same thing. I mean, if you read some Nyingmapa Dzogchen stuff, it's very good, but why is it good? Because maybe you studied some Mahamudra stuff. And what's that based on? Well, because maybe you're a really good meditator. So yeah, I mean, I can say that you like to say, yeah. So the Galupa Mahamudra has a lot of connection with the Kargyu Mahamudra. Absolutely, there is some things that have changed a little bit with time because of particular teachers, and that's one thing that with all of the teachings of the Buddha, each teacher spins it a little bit different way. And so therefore but that's why you get different lineages. For example, in the Kargyu lineage, there's 11 schools of Kargyupa. That means 11 different lineages. I mean, there's Karma Kargyu, Drikun Kargyu, I can't remember all the other names of them, but there's 11.
Obviously, not too many.
Yeah, but the point being is it's because a particular teacher had a particular spin on a particular teaching and people liked it. And so then they started to follow that style.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I take that as a compliment, what you just said. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I think I'm done with questions. What about you, Elizabeth?
I've been thinking about the point that you've mentioned about patience. And I was wondering if you could maybe, Jumpa, give us a kind of a patience exercise that we can do for the next week.
Well, okay. You have to remember that it's how you define the word. So if patience is, I've got to sit here and be abused by this person because they're angry and I have to be patient, that's a really painful way to be. Like it's sort of like, hit me again. Okay, I'm patient. I can take it. I can handle this, Whereas for me, it's about the perspective. So for me, if I've got somebody angry in front of me, let's say, for example, Raquel, my wife, is upset. It's not like, oh, it's like, well, I've got to be patient. Yeah. But, what can I do that will be beneficial? Maybe I just have to listen, or maybe I have to, let's say be quiet, or maybe I have to say something. So it's a lot more, you could say, proactive. But the point is that it's the place you're resting in patience is, I would like to benefit this situation, but I have to wait for the right opportunity. Okay. And so with that feeling, you do maintain a positive framework for yourself. It's for yourself, And the other one is when someone's upset in front of you, the big thing to remember is that person's just unhappy. They're suffering. And they're thinking, if I get angry with you, I'm going to be happy. So again, that's one very good way to view somebody. You could say with love and compassion. They're unhappy, they're suffering, and they're using anger as the way to express it. So that you watch them. Now you can't say anything because they get more angry. But the point is that you are conscious of the fact that right now that person's very unhappy, they're suffering viciously, and they're using anger as a technique. That's another way to maintain your own self-peace, your own self-tranquility. But another one, the second one, is to say, okay, I love this person, I'd like to benefit them. So, okay, I'm going to wait for the better opportunity to say something. Because when somebody is angry, saying something just is gasoline on the fire, they get more angry. So sometimes it's better just to sort of go slowly. And then I'll give you one thing that's really interesting. It's called last word. So when you're in having a difficult time with somebody and they're saying this and this and this, be careful who gets last word, because if you try to have the last word, it just gets them to go again. Yeah, it's funny, even if you say, yes, you're right, they'll say, yes, damn right, I'm right. But then you have to be silent, It's sort of funny, like, it's a very interesting little thing to think of, who's going to get last word? And in some way, it's wise to let the other person have the last word, because it sort of stops the conversation. Whereas if you keep having to try to say something, it just gets them going again. So it's a very interesting thing, dealing with people's upset.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we had two things though. You know, the bigger one I think is I'd like to be beneficial for this person. I guess I have to wait a little bit. So that's the patience we're talking about. And it's a positive context.
Mhm.
One final unrelated question.
Yeah.
How was the eclipse for you?
Oh, wonderful. Our
Mm.
city was in the central position to have 4 minutes of complete obscurity. Like
Wow.
other cities had less. They had like 3 minutes or 2 minutes. We had a full 4 minutes. So we were in the best position for the solar return. And it was incredible. It was powerful. Like, you know, I mean,
Mm.
the darkness that comes on, and then suddenly it's cold. And then on top of that, all the noises of animals and things, they all stop. Like all the birds, and we have a lot of birds where I live. We're all chirpy,
Stop
chirpy,
singing.
chirpy, chirpy. The solar eclipse happened, they all went quiet. It was phenomenal. It was powerful.
That's interesting. I wonder why. They thought that it was night. Why
Yep.
would they stop singing?
Birds react very
Well,
heavily to
it's because they
Oh.
think it's nighttime.
Mhm.
Oh.
I mean, that's what I read an article on it, and it said for the animals, they think, oh, I guess it's night, and they sort of they have this automatic response.
Wow. It must have been incredible. The silence of creation all of a sudden. Wow.
Yeah, and then I mean, it was a very interesting experience. I mean, I've been through other ones. I don't remember them very well, but this one that was because we made the time and the space to be there. We watched the sun slowly get darker, and you know we had
Mm.
special glasses. And then when it got completely dark, it was like this silence. It
Oh.
was a good event.
Mhm.
Okay, so now next week, this is it. This is the last one because next week I'm getting ready to travel. I'll be going to Ireland. So, and I did conclude basically the initial scope, middle scope, and great scope of spiritual practice, and we touched on Tantra. So, my goal with both of you was to basically give you a simplistic overview, but touch on key points. And again, now it's just to study over the next 5, 10, 20 years of your life, and you have this sort of overview of what the graduated path is. So it's good. And then within that, then of course, it gives you a solid foundation for your tantric practice.
That was excellent, Lama Jama. It was really helpful. And now I feel my leg stance for the spiritual martial art of Tadrayana much stronger.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay, good. Okay, well, so take good care. You're still in Germany?
Yes.
Yes, we're near Rosenheim right now,
Okay.
Bavaria.
Well, it looks like a beautiful day. Enjoy it. Springtime.
Can we show you around really quickly? It's
Sure.
really beautiful. Look, we're at a lake.